In 15 years they took over. 4,000 became 50,000. A Protestant stronghold transformed into a Catholic metropolis. The Brahmins, Boston's elite families, watched in horror as their city changed overnight. This wasn't immigration, this was an invasion, and the Irish weren't asking permission. They were claiming Boston as their own. Using AI technology, I've restored historical photographs from 1800s Boston, bringing to life the streets, churches, and tenements where this cultural war was fought. Walk with me through Beacon Hill's gas lamps, the North End's crowded alleys, and the churches where two worlds collided. This is the story of how Boston died and was reborn. Boston in 1800 was a Puritan city. Founded in 1630 by religious refugees, it remained proudly Protestant, Anglo-Saxon, and insular. The population was just 25,000, smaller than it had been during the Revolutionary War. Beacon Hill's gas-lit streets and federal-style brick townhouses housed the Brahmins, families like the Cabots, Lowells, and Adamses, who traced their lineage to the Mayflower. They controlled everything. Harvard University was their intellectual fortress. The Massachusetts State House, completed in 1798 with its golden dome, symbolized their power. This was the city set on high, a beacon of Protestant reform. Temperance movements banned alcohol. Boston's elite saw themselves as America's moral conscience. The city's 1,500 Jews and handful of Catholics kept to the shadows, practicing their faith in private. Then came the Irish. The Great Irish Famine changed everything. In 1845, a potato blight destroyed Ireland's staple crop. Within 5 years, 1 million Irish would die of starvation. Another million fled, and 100,000 came to Boston. They arrived on coffin ships, packed like cargo. Typhus, cholera, and dysentery killed thousands mid-voyage. Those who survived stumbled ashore at Boston's docks, too poor to go anywhere else. In 1840, Boston had 4,000 Irish. By 1855, that number exploded to over 50,000, nearly 1/3 of the city's population. They crammed into the North End, Fort Hill, and the South Cove, slums that horrified native Bostonians. 10 to 15 people shared single rooms. Entire families lived in cellars below sea level, flooded with sewage during high tide. In 1849, cholera struck. Of 611 deaths, 500 were Irish. The Brahmins blamed the victims. They bring disease and ignorance, a Boston newspaper wrote. But the Irish kept coming. The Old North Church, built in 1723, hung the lanterns for Paul Revere's ride, but it also represented Protestant power. Walk into the North End today, and you're in what became Boston's Little Italy. But in the 1850s, it was overwhelmingly Irish Catholic. Faneuil Hall, built in 1742 as a marketplace and meeting hall, hosted heated debates about Irish immigration. Trinity Church in Copley Square, completed in 1877, rose from the Great Boston Fire of 1872 in the newly filled Back Bay, where Protestant elites fled to escape Irish neighborhoods. The African Meeting House on Beacon Hill, built in 1806, is America's oldest black church. It hosted abolitionists like Frederick Douglass, many of whom opposed Irish immigration. Boston Common saw temperance rallies and anti-Irish demonstrations. These aren't just tourist stops, they're the actual battlegrounds where Boston's future was decided. The Civil War gave Irish immigrants their chance to prove their patriotism. When President Lincoln called for troops in 1861, Boston's Irish answered en masse. The 9th Massachusetts Infantry, nicknamed the Fighting Ninth, was heavily Irish. They fought at Gettysburg, the Wilderness, and Petersburg. Over 200,000 Irish-born men served in the Union Army, many from Boston. When the war ended, something had shifted. Brahmin families who had questioned Irish loyalty now couldn't deny their sacrifice. The prejudice didn't disappear, but it had to adapt. Irish veterans returned to Boston with new confidence. They had earned their place. Now they wanted power, and they knew exactly how to get it. Politics, block-by-block organization, loyalty to their own. The machine was being built. By the 1880s, Irish Catholics controlled Boston's streets. Not its banks, not its law firms, not Harvard, but its wards, its police force, its city council. Hugh O'Brien became Boston's first Irish Catholic mayor in 1885. The Brahmins were horrified. They retreated to Beacon Hill and the new Back Bay, creating exclusive clubs that barred Irish membership. But the Irish didn't care about their clubs. They had the votes. Patrick Collins became mayor in 1902. Then John "Honey" Fitzgerald, grandfather of President John F. Kennedy, took office in 1906. The Irish had perfected machine politics, delivering jobs, solving problems, ensuring loyalty. One ward boss could place 1,000 men in city jobs. The Brahmins still had the money, but the Irish had the people, and in a democracy, people vote. Boston's Protestant elite never recovered their dominance. The city they built had been taken from them, legally, democratically, and completely. As Irish power solidified, new immigrants arrived. Starting in the 1880s, Italians and Jews from Eastern Europe flooded Boston. The North End, once Irish, became 90% Italian by 1920. Italians brought their own culture, street festivals, cafes, markets, selling pasta and pizza. The religious processions and feasts transformed North End summers. By 1910, they had enough political power to make Columbus Day a Massachusetts holiday. Meanwhile, Russian and Polish Jews settled nearby, creating a vibrant business district. Unlike the Irish, Jews emphasized education above all else. By 1906, the North End's Eliot School was 2/3 Jewish. They opened retail stores and small businesses, integrating into Boston's commercial life faster than the Irish had. The established Irish, barely a generation removed from poverty themselves, sometimes looked down on these newer arrivals. The cycle of prejudice continued. On November 9, 1872, fire broke out in a warehouse on Summer Street. Within hours, downtown Boston was an inferno. The fire consumed 776 buildings across 65 acres. Nearly everything between Washington Street and the waterfront. Trinity Church, second building, burned to the ground. Millions in property vanished overnight. But Boston rebuilt fast and fireproof. Granite and iron replaced wood. Wider streets improved fire access. The disaster accelerated the city's modernization. More importantly, the fire created opportunity. The fire physically reshaped Boston into segregated zones, the wealthy in the Back Bay, the Irish in the North End and South End, the working class in Charlestown and East Boston. The contrast between Boston's rich and poor was stark. On Commonwealth Avenue in the Back Bay, Brahmin families lived in 4-story brownstones with servants, private libraries, and manicured gardens. Their children attended private schools and summered in Newport. A 5-minute walk away, Irish families in the South End crowded into triple-decker tenements, 5 or 6 to a room. Fathers worked 12-hour days as dock workers, construction laborers, or servants in Brahmin homes. Mothers took in laundry and boarders to make ends meet. By 1900, Boston was unrecognizable from its 1800 Puritan self. Catholics outnumbered Protestants. Irish surnames dominated city payrolls. Italians controlled the North End. Jews had established thriving businesses. The Brahmins still had wealth and Harvard, but they'd lost the city itself. Modern Boston is their creation. Irish politically, Italian culturally, with Jewish commercial energy, all layered over Puritan foundations. Walk Beacon Hill's gaslit streets today, and you're walking through Brahmin history. Visit the North End's Italian festivals, and you're experiencing the neighborhood the Irish once dominated. Attend Mass at any of Boston's Catholic churches, now the city's religious majority. The city that banned Catholics from voting in 1850 elected an Irish Catholic mayor in 1885 and sent an Irish Catholic to the White House in 1960. Boston didn't just change, it was conquered, democratically, bloodlessly, but completely. The Puritans founded it, the Irish claimed it, and they never gave it back. If there is another city, another era, or another moment in history you'd like to see brought back to life, let me know in the comment. Thanks for watching.